I guess I'll go ahead and start letting people in.
All right. Okay, folks, we're going to start in 1 minute. Give everybody time to get adjusted and situated. All right, we've got okay, just a quick note to everyone before we get started. This is live streaming on our Economic Alliance Snohomish County Facebook page, and it will be posted on our YouTube page after the fact as well. So if you want to share it now on your Facebook page, that would be great. Okay, it is 8:31, folks, and it is time.
I'm gonna go to work.
We're gonna get everybody muted first. It is time for Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. We're gonna see a lot of information today about our mid-legislative session update. And before we do that, we have some housekeeping. We're gonna pull to screen just a simple update to all of you. I would love it if you would please put your name and organization in the chat below so we know who you are and who you're with, and give you a welcome good morning. And remember to mute yourselves throughout this process. And when we get to Q&A, please take your time to put your questions in the chat section so that our senators and Shelly can get to those. And I'll make sure that I pull those up for you all as we move forward. Now, without further ado, drum roll, please. I hope everyone has their coffee. At the end of this, we like to do a big thank you to everyone and show that we all are in solidarity. So we go to a gallery screen to make sure that each of you can show what coffee drink you have or water. All right, so that being said, I have some introductions to make. We have the very awesome, outstanding Senator Jesse Salomon from the 32nd Legislative District here today. Senator, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, sir. When you said the very awesome senator, I was like, that's not me. I'll just wait.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to talking to you. And then we also have our amazing Senior Governmental Affairs Consultant with Gordon Thomas Honeywell, Governmental Affairs, Economic Alliance, Snohomish County Lobbyist, and is doing an amazing job. Shelly Pund-Helder is here. Shelly, thank you for being here today to give us an update as well.
My pleasure.
And last but not least, we will have Senator John Lovick on around in the next 10 to 12 minutes or so. So Senator Lovick, who represents the 44th Legislative District, will be here as well. So stay tuned. And first and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining us today. This is an opportunity for us to talk about the mid-legislative session update and talk about key elements that have been instrumental in moving things forward during this session, but also just keeping your mind and eyes focused on what's happened during the first portion of this session. And with that said, I get to pass it off to Shelly to give an update. Thank you, Shelly.
Good morning. Thanks, Gary. Good to see you all this morning. I have my coffee, so cheers to you. Thanks for being here. As Gary said, I have the pleasure of being the contract lobbyist for Economic Alliance Snohomish County, which means I am your eyes and ears in Olympia on a daily basis. And before we turn it over to hear from our elected officials, I thought I would just start with a really high-level summary of what has happened in the session so far. So this is a long session. It's 105 days. And the primary objective of the legislature during a long session is to adopt budgets. The state has 3 budgets. They have the operating, capital, and transportation budgets. And so they have designated budget writers in both the House and the Senate that are working on drafting those budgets. Every day they meet. And when the next state revenue forecast is released on March 20th, shortly thereafter, we will begin to see draft budgets. The process after the budgets are released between the House and the Senate, there's opportunities for public hearing, and the budgets make their way through the legislative process. Simultaneous to the budget development, the legislature is also considering hundreds of policies. And I would say I think there was a little over 1,600 bills introduced last time I counted. And as we go through the legislative process, bills die because they don't make it past key cutoff points. And there's less than half of the bills that have been introduced are still alive and advancing. Some of the key policies that the legislature is focusing on this session are workforce development. Of course, that's an important topic for Economic Alliance Snohomish County. They're also wanting to make some really significant changes to help with our state's housing crisis, both removing barriers for the construction of more housing units by the private market, but also with additional investments in affordable housing. Another couple of topics are public safety. There's a big emphasis on public safety policies, and then climate resiliency in response to how are we best to steward our resources. So I don't want to steal any of the thunder from our esteemed senator who's with us. So I think without further ado, I will turn it over to Senator Jesse Salomon.
Well, thank you so much, Shelly. It's good to know that I'm esteemed. I appreciate that. So I think the best use of my time here would be focusing on public safety and then housing bills, housing supply. Feel free to ask any questions you want to. In terms of housing, in terms of the Blake bill, so I introduced, and first of all, I acknowledge we do have sort of rampant drug use across the whole state. I pulled into a gas station at 7 a.m. on Tuesday in Auburn, and there were some guys that looked like they had stolen some tires and they were loading it onto a car, and there was somebody that was strung out on, I think, meth in the gas station. And it's just like anywhere you go, it's like, come on, can we do something about this, please? So I introduced a bill that was based off my experience as a public defender for 15 years, as well as a prosecutor before that, where it would create a gross misdemeanor for possession of drugs. Before the Blake ruling, it was a felony, although there was real questions about how it was being prosecuted. King County, I think, generally didn't prosecute them as a felony. And that's fine. I don't think it needs to be a felony. I think we need to have a structure of probation and supervision to make sure people do treatment. So that was my goal. And also rolling back this referral system where, I talked to a lot of police officers in your communities in King County and across the state, where they said, like, we can't track the referrals, or we can't force people to give us their ID so we can give them a referral and track it, because we don't know if it's an arrestable offense, and we don't want to get in a physical altercation with them if we're just going to give them a referral. And it became this negative feedback loop. So essentially what we had done was decriminalize drugs effectively. So that's our experiment. Didn't work very well. My bill that I introduced, 5467, said that if you get charged with gross misdemeanor, if you do treatment before you're convicted, your case is dismissed. If you're convicted, unlike any other crime, the judge cannot sentence you to jail, only to a substance use disorder assessment. And then we talked about co-locating those assessments in court, getting them done immediately, et cetera. And then, so you'd be basically on probation, roughly similar to like a DUI supervision scheme, except it's 2 years instead of five for DUI. But you have to do treatment. And so if the treatment provider says, look, doesn't have a problem, it's 8 hours of drug information school at the low end, that's fine, do that. And then we overturn your conviction, you walk away. If it's 30-day inpatient, you got to do that, and we'll fund it according to the bill. If you don't do treatment, that's where the jail consequences come in. So I had originally proposed a minimum of 45 days of jail post-conviction if you don't do treatment. If you do treatment, your case is overturned, you're vacated as if you've never been convicted. So it's just lots of different ways to try to get you new treatment. That bill did not advance out of Law and Justice Committee. However, a similar bill by June Robinson did. And, it talks a lot about pretrial diversion before, and then if people don't do the pretrial diversion, they get a gross misdemeanor, but it didn't talk about the probation scheme that I just mentioned. And I felt like that was pretty important to have in there. We were able to essentially put that part of my bill onto the Robinson bill, and that is now out of Ways and Means. So the bill before the full caucus, Democrat and Republican, will essentially have that probation idea in it. First offense, there's no mandatory revocation time, so it's discretionary to the judge. Second offense is 21 days minimum. Third offense is 45. That was just sort of a compromise, that how it wound up. So the way I think about it is, hopefully we don't need the mandatory time, people do the treatment. But if they don't, and if this is the trick, right, that hammer of jail time that they need hanging over their head to motivate, then how many, what I'm thinking is, like, how many times does a person get caught with drugs, right? And it would seem like a lot if you're out there using all the time. And so in thinking about, do I think this, the way it was amended is sufficient? Is it a good policy? Should we move it forward as is? I think it really depends on the enforcement, right? Because what I'm hearing from police is, like, our numbers are down, so it's hard for us to enforce. So I think that's also going to be a key piece in making this system work. A good part of the Democratic caucus is not going to vote for this. I don't know how many, probably, I don't know, 10 or 12, just because they're more of a decriminalization model focus. And so this will be a right up the middle kind of bill, right? We're going to have Democrats and Republicans. It's going to be very bipartisan. And then so the question is, like, we do want Democratic support. We have to have that to get it through the House. So, how do you tweak the bill to get Democrats versus Republicans on board? And that's an unanswered question. So part of my question to you is, there's a lot about harm reduction, medically assisted treatment facilities, opiate treatment facilities, and that I think the Republicans are going to want to take out in order to get some of their votes. But personally, I'm not sure how I feel about those provisions. I don't feel strongly against them, but I do want to get some feedback from you guys on all that. So should we stop there and get some feedback, and then we can move into housing?
Absolutely. I think Shelly has a question, and everyone in the Zoom, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them.
Yeah. Thanks, Senator, for explaining that and for spending some time with us this morning. My question, and perhaps it's a question running through the minds of the other participants this morning, is what happens when someone needs to go to, is referred for treatment, but there is no treatment available at that particular time?
So under the bill, you cannot have jail time revoked and imposed if you tried to go to treatment and there was none available. I mean, it explicitly says that in the amendment, because obviously you don't want to, obviously that's not right. And then it's up to the state legislature and local governments, but I think we need to make sure that we fund treatment. I think there's a recognition that you're not going to get out of this cheaply. Like, we have a public safety crisis. Either we're paying for jails like late-term mental health crises, social security funding, money, Medicare, whatnot, as a result of long-term drug addiction, or we're going to try to fight it on the front end, which is what we're trying to do here. But any specific feedback about how we could best fund treatment facilities in the area, that's all appreciated. We put, I think, 80 million into treatment 2 years ago for the Blake fix. So problem is, I think there was workforce issues, and there wasn't that much demand for the treatment, oddly enough. Partly, I think, because we decriminalized drugs and nobody was being sent that way. So.
All right. Well, as we'll continue to field questions for Senator Salomon, but first and foremost, I want to give a warm welcome to Senator John Lovick of the 44th Legislative District. Senator Lovick, thank you for joining us. I know you're a busy man as well. And I welcome, just a quick welcome to you, and then we'll continue to field questions for Senator Salomon.
I'll let you continue to field questions. Thanks for the warm welcome. How's that?
All right.
Let you know I'm here and I'm alive.
Thank you very much. Folks, if you have any additional questions for Senator Salomon, please throw them in the chat. I think one additional question that I have, Senator, is tied to the nature by which you think housing can be impacted, especially Snohomish County specifically. We know that those are critical needs in the homelessness space, but also in just general workforce development space. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. And I'd appreciate your feedback on this stuff. So my focus, I'm on local government, which got split away from housing. So I don't have like the rent control bills. I've not been tracking that, but the housing supply bills I've been tracking. And they're kind of two different concepts in those bills. One is loosening regulations to increase supply, and the other one is mandated zoning densities. Like, those are the two things. I have a bill 5412 that would repeal the project level SEPA appeal avenue. So in other words, if there's like a planned action or environmental impact statement at the comprehensive plan level, that's where you could have your citizen appeals. But when a permit's being issued to actually break ground and develop something, right now, you can have another set of appeals under State Environmental Policy Act, which then just trips it all up, right? Trips the project up. And so we're trying to remove that second thing. Originally, my view is like, I am a very strong environmentalist. I got a tattoo of the planet Earth on my shoulder from when I was in college, right? You can't take that back, but I don't regret it at all. State Environmental Policy Act was supposed to be an environmental goal, but now people are saying, well, my environment's affected because I don't have parking, or, you know, something seemingly unrelated to what we were trying to do in the past, which is like stop pollution, so on and so forth. So it's been captured. So that's my rationale. And we passed a bill similar to that last year, 5818. So it's building on that. So secondly, and so there's a few of those deregulatory bills that could move. Secondly, all the zoning mandates, we just passed an ADU, accessory dwelling unit bill out of the Senate yesterday, which I did support. And it says that you as local governments cannot ban the building of ADUs on lots 4,500 square feet or more, it's subject to certain public health and safety regulations, but it has to sync up with whatever limitations you put on single family. You can't put more on ADUs. And importantly, you cannot require owner occupancy, meaning, you know, this then creates a secondary housing supply. I really don't think you're going to see like 1 million ADUs pop up in 10 years because it still costs $100,000. Still got to hook it up to sewer, water, etc. So I think it's a gentle infill bill. Then there's bigger bills like mandated density around transportation TOD areas. Then there's the middle housing bill, which is essentially, I guess it does end single family zoning, which is a scary word, but scary term, but you know, it's duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes on lots. And I frankly have mixed feelings about that policy. I I do think we need to move forward on on density. The minimum, there's some bills around disallowing locals to require minimum parking on street for new development. That bill in the Senate did not advance. And then there's a lot splitting bill. If you have a lot size, 4,500 square feet or more, you can split that by right, create a duplex, etc. As long as it doesn't interfere with critical areas. So those are just some of the bills that are moving. There's a plethora of those types of bills. Okay.
Thank you, Senator. Shelly, did you have a quick question or follow up before we go to Senator Lovick?
Yeah, just a quick question for you, Senator Salomon. I know many of us have heard in the news and heard rumors about the governor's proposal when it comes to a significant investment in affordable housing, being that increasing the state's debt limit and investing $4 billion in the Housing Trust Fund and other programs. What are your thoughts on that? And as a caucus, have you guys been discussing that proposal? And if that, then what else is being considered?
Well, my understanding is, as a policy, that did not pass out of Ways and Means, but I haven't been tracking that too closely. So there's a chance maybe the House is moving it. I don't know. We haven't discussed it as a caucus, and I'm open-minded to that. I do believe the situation warrants something like that. It's hard to overstate the negative impact of housing costs right now on all kinds of social ills. But yeah, I just leave it at that. I don't know the future of that, but I think it's on shaky legs right now.
All right, Senator Salomon, really appreciate you giving us that overview and update and diving into some questions. I think we're going to give Senator Lovick some time to chime in. Really appreciate you being here, Senator Salomon. Senator Lovick, take it away.
Hey, it's a tough act to follow. You guys, you put me at this disadvantage here, having to follow Senator Salomon. It's just a tough act. But I'm glad to be here. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm sorry we can't do this in person, but I'll just start by letting you guys know I appreciate the great work that you're doing. And I don't plan to open with a speech, but I'd like to take any questions you have. You probably know that I serve on the Environment Committee, the Business Financial Services, Gaming and Trades Committee, and Transportation. And we're doing a lot of great stuff, and I'm sure listening to what Senator Salomon said, you probably know that we're moving in the right direction, I believe.
All right. Well, Senator Lovick, I do have some questions for you, and I'm going to open it up again to Shelly and the rest of our participants to ask questions as well. Put them in the chat. But first and foremost, Senator, what are your top priorities for this session? Can you speak to those for us?
So, we all start out with certain priorities and then they change once you get here. And I know when I was in the House, every priority that I had appeared to just because I was in a somewhat of a position of seniority over there. Over here, I'm just a freshman. So you kind of start at the bottom of the heap. But I'm going to start by saying, and I think it's going to be hard to disagree with this, community safety has to be a top priority. It's a top priority for all of us. I've always believed, always have believed this, and always will believe this, is that we should be safe in our homes, safe on our streets, and our children should be and feel safe in school. So community safety is one of my top priorities. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is we're trying to get regional law enforcement campuses. I don't care where you go, I don't care who you talk to, we're finding that law enforcement, the staffing is just down, because they train all of the officers down in Burien, and they just can't keep up with all of the retirements that are coming in. If you remember, when Bill Clinton was president, they hired a couple of 100,000 officers. That was in the 90s, and those officers are retiring. And so we're trying to have regional law enforcement campuses. We're going to have one up in Skagit County at Skagit Valley College. We're trying to get one down in Edmonds. And we're obviously going to open one on May 8th over in Pasco. We're trying to get one down in Clark County to train more officers so that we can get our officers on the streets to keep all of us safe in our communities. So that's one of my top priorities.
All right, thank you, Senator. Shelly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have
I
a
do.
question.
Go
I do
for it,
have a
Shelley.
question. Thank you. Good
Good
morning,
to see you.
Senator. You as
I'm doing
well.
well. Yeah.
So I noticed that the end of the week last week, the model vehicle pursuits bill that was being considered in Ways and Means was not advanced. I know vehicle pursuits is a popular topic at the legislature this session. Can you offer any thoughts on where you see that headed, or if it's going to advance at all this session?
Well, you know, what I was told, and I was told this the first day I came to the legislature many, many years ago, nothing is dead until the gavel is lowered at sine die. I was a bit disappointed that we couldn't get the model policy through, because I thought it was the way to go. If you'll remember, a few years ago when we put together a policing policy leadership team, we consulted with some of the leading scholars throughout the country. And one of the things that we were going to do is that we were going to do something with canines, put some restrictions on canines. I didn't know anything about handling dogs and canines. So we decided to do a model policy, and they did a great job. So we were going to do the same thing with pursuits, try and have 19 different groups come to us and tell us what they wanted to do. And I was actually watching the hearing, which you got to think must have a pretty boring life as if I was watching the Ways and Means Committee hearing Saturday, but I wanted to see if it passed. And every time they brought up a new set of bills to pass, it wasn't there. So, but that's the way it is. I respect the process that we have down here. Whether I like everything about it, no, but I respect the process, and we'll see what happens with the other pursuit legislation that's coming over to us from the Senate.
All right, thank you, Senator. There's a follow-up question in the chat. It's tied to Senator Solomon's comments on the enforcement bill, drug enforcement bill. And so the question was, do you agree with Senator Solomon's thoughts on moving folks to rehab instead of jail?
I do. There's a thing called being tough on crime. You know, I was a police officer for almost 40 years. We can be tough, but we can also have that hand of compassion. And that's what I think we're trying to do, is we're trying to say, we need to show some compassion. And being in law enforcement as long as I was, everybody that goes to jail or to prison, they're going to be back in the community at some point. And we need to prepare them for coming back to the community. So I think that being tough to a certain degree, but also having that hand of compassion is what I think we're trying to do. And let me just say this, and I don't want to take all the time up. I remember when we voted on the Blake legislation, I was actually presiding on the House floor. And I remember standing there thinking to myself, this is the way to go. I thought we were doing something that was going to be good, but we've learned a lot in that amount of time. And I think Senator Solomon's approach, and I think Senator June Robinson's approach, I think they're trying to move us in the right direction.
Thank you, Senator. Another question specifically tied to Snohomish County and transportation. Snohomish County obviously has strong interest in transportation. I guess the question would be, what direction are the discussions going pertaining to transportation? And then when can we anticipate a revised transportation budget?
Well, so I get to sit right next to probably one of the sharpest people I've ever seen in transportation. That's Senator Elias. He's the chair, and I'm just honored to be the vice chair next to him. And we're having some conversations, having some discussions now. And I think I might be moving a little fast to try and talk about what those conversations are. But we are having conversations now about our direction. You know, if you remember, last year we passed a 16-year, $17 billion transportation package. And we know we didn't do all we needed to do, and we need to do more. So those conversations are taking place now.
All right, thank you, Senator. Just a few more questions. One is tied to the connection, realizing that the education and workforce development focus is a critical piece to cultivating our future talent and workforce in Washington State and Snohomish County. What are the major challenges we face in this space?
Well, it's not an area that I have a whole lot of expertise in, but I will say this, I would say probably the number one challenge is just going to be dollars and funding. And that's just always there. It comes down to budget, and probably most of the decisions we try to make, they'll just come down to budget, come down to dollars.
And I guess just a final question that I have for you. What are you excited about during this session? What gets you excited about the potential impact that you can have? Can you speak to that?
Oh, that is, all of these questions, by the way, are great questions. I get excited personally. I get excited when I look outside and I see the beauty that we're dealing with. I get to look at the Capitol, and I was kind of born and raised in the segregated South, and I just get really excited when I see these youngsters come down here. When I see the Capitol, we open the Capitol, and I see these kids walking around, the excitement. This is our future. And so if you can't get excited about that, you can't get excited about anything. Just to see these youngsters coming down, and I see some walking over to the Capitol now, they get off the bus. That excites me. And frankly, just to get to work with members, we're not the other Washington. And I tell people this all the time. We are sometimes, to a certain degree, we might be opponents, but we're not enemies. And I get excited about the fact that we can work to try and do great things for our state.
Thank you, Senator. There are a few other questions in the chat, but I want to make sure that I give Shelly and Senator Salomon a chance to kind of give some feedback as well. Senator Lovick, this is great. Shelly, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I just going back to the transportation discussion, appreciate you serving us in that way. And we are well represented, having Senator Lobbyist as well as yourself representing Snohomish County in these transportation discussions. I think you've heard from others, and I just want to echo our desire to see the commitments that were made in the Connecting Washington package honored. Every legislator I've talked to has indicated a desire to maintain those commitments. So we stand behind that request. And when it comes to the move ahead implementation, as you are working on that, making decisions, if you have questions about how phasing of different projects will impact Snohomish County, please don't hesitate to reach out, because we want to be a resource to you guys as you're making difficult decisions.
Thank you, Shelly. And let me just say this, and I say this with great respect. I have been, this is my 17th year here in Olympia. And personally, I've worked with a lot of great leaders, but I don't think I've worked with anyone as talented in the transportation arena as Senator Lobbyist. He has an open door policy. We meet during the session. We meet sometimes 3 times, 4 times a day. We do a pre-meeting and a meeting after that meeting and a post-meeting. But he really does. He has this entire state. And what I think we did is, what I like that he did, we probably could have ended up with many, many more things in our county, but he made sure that he touched all 4 corners of our state. And that's what's very impressive about working with him. We're going to get it done.
Thank you, Senator Lovick. Thank you, Shelly, for that. As we move this along, we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask some questions of any of our panelists here, our dignified senators that we have here, but also Shelly, who serves us as a lobbyist in Olympia as well.
And a great job Shelly does. I just want you to know that. I'm not saying that because she's here. She's been always been a great person to work with, and I've enjoyed working with her. With all of you, frankly.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I have a few questions here. One, and I'm just going to open this up to the senators. If you'd like to answer, and Shelly, if you'd like to chime in as well, it's great. The first question is about, it's very general. What is Washington State doing to clean up Puget Sound? So, and tying that to Tulalip tribes having many traditional practices and gatherings, just to think about what we're doing that might harm or impact those spaces.
I could take that one, Senator Jesse Salomon here. I'm the Vice Chair of Natural Resources, Parks, Agriculture, and Water. we just, the committee jurisdiction just gave water quality to that committee. It used to be in EET, Environment, Energy, Technology. But I don't think we've, on a policy level, really dug in yet on that. We've talked a lot about water supply, in-stream flows for salmon versus water for agriculture in cities. So I mean, I could talk about that, although I think I could sum it up as it's a pretty intractable problem with no easy solutions. And then on the habitat side, I'm very interested in restoring salmon runs. I'm a longtime sport fisherman myself, an environmentalist, and been working with the tribes up in Snohomish County on the Snohomish River estuary projects. I'm very excited about that. I know the Tulalip tribe has invested heavily with Snohomish County. So I am interested in continuing those improvements. There are hundreds of acres of the Snohomish River estuary that can still be restored, and there's no real reason why we're not moving forward, except that assembling money, grants, dollars for one big project has to come from lots of different areas, and it takes forever and it's inefficient. So I would like to work on sort of streamlining that process so we can get these projects done faster. So yeah, always happy to discuss that kind of stuff.
And I just want to, I'll just take just a second to underscore what Senator Salomon said. It is great working with all of you, but it's also great working with our tribal partners. I've been very much involved with working with our Tulalip tribes for a long time. And when you're new on a committee like I am on the Environment Committee, I always kind of use the old George Washington philosophy. First you listen, then you learn, then you help, and then you lead. And I've listened a lot this last year, learned a whole lot, and now I feel I'm in a position to help where I can. But this is something that was a great question that we absolutely need to address. I'm a former Coast Guardsman, and you know, clean water is what we used to be about, keeping the beautiful Puget Sound. So we have a lot of work to do, but we have some great partners to work with.
That's awesome, and thank you. I think we're a state that is very much attached to its history and maintaining and sustaining the beautiful space that was found.
Yeah.
We talked about Puget Sound. Senator Lovick, you did mention your significance in history. It is the last day of Black History Month, so I wanted to highlight the important work that you've done. Also, here at Economic Alliance, we've been doing some level of Black History notes, and one of those was the George Bush family that located from Missouri to Washington State, and then having the son of George Bush become one of the elected officials in Washington State history, and connecting those spaces. Do you want to speak to just your space and this place in Washington State?
Well, you know, you always want to get me emotional, I guess. I will just say this, that I will never be able to walk in their shoes. Guys like George Bush, guys like, when I look at Mr. John Lewis, but I do get to every single day sit on the floor of the Senate and realize that I'm standing on some broad shoulders. And I don't ever forget that. I try not to use I as much as I can, because it is about those people who came and opened doors for me. And I just love the opportunity that I get, because I stand on some broad shoulders serving in the state Senate. And I will never forget it.
Thank you. And Senator Salomon, I don't want to leave you out of this space, connecting the focus on history and what it ties into your leadership today for Washington State. Do you have any words to connect to that for us? And he may not be available to answer.
Yeah, thank you. I caught me by surprise. I deeply appreciate, I'm so happy that Senator Lovick is serving with us. I rely on him for a lot of expertise, historical expertise. I appreciate, John, the bill on trying to get equity for African-American homeowners who have been shut out of the loan process. I'm a co-sponsor of that bill. I'm very excited about it. And the fact that you were sponsoring it made me feel like this is you know, a bill to really highlight and support. So that was huge. Senator Nobles has been a huge addition, who's now in leadership in the Senate and is helping blaze the path. And so, you know, having those folks here looking to their leadership on these issues is really important and a blessing and makes the Senate better by their presence.
Thank you, Senator. And one additional question we have in the chat, I want to make sure I get to it. And then Shelly, if you have any closing remarks, and we'll kind of move it forward from there. The question is, in keeping our children safe, what is happening with the child marriage bill? So
I can't remember. Do you remember, Senator Salomon? We have so many bills in the Senate. We have over 750, and I just can't remember.
1,600 bills, huh?
Yeah.
Did we hear that in law justice? I vaguely remember.
The Senate bill did not receive a hearing, but the House bill is advancing. The House bill is in House rules. It's House Bill 1455. So if it gets out of the House, it'll go over to the Senate, and Senator Salomon and Senator Lovick will have an opportunity to consider it.
thank you, Shelly. And I think, let's see, there might be one follow-up question, and it might be tied to the topic of child safety. And I think this is a longer comment, so I'll just read it really quickly. I don't feel that zero tolerance in our school is enforced, or there is enough being done in our schools to ensure drug use and drug sales are being prevented. Is it policy to expel students for bringing or threatening to bring weapons to school, or students only being suspended for a period of time? So that's the question.
You know, I don't know what the policy is in our schools, but I think school districts are taking a closer look at what is going on. You know, I obviously, we don't want kids bringing weapons to school. We obviously don't want kids bringing drugs to schools. But I think we have to find a better way to address this, because you know, I'm doing a lot of reading every single day, and what I'm hearing is that certain people, certain groups are being suspended a lot quicker than other groups. But it's a topic that I'm going to look into, because what I've had the opportunity to do is visit most of the schools, and I had some the school board members who were down yesterday, and I can probably say this: I visit just about every school in Snohomish County. I have a few more to go in the North Shore School District, but really like to find out what the programs are in this area.
I think that's a better question for the OSPI Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, as to whether there's a statewide policy to expel kids from school for guns or drugs. I don't know the answer to that. I do know it's likely that every school district has their own policy in general. And there is a movement towards not expelling. That's the sense that I get, at least in King County, in general. Now, I cannot speak to like weapons themselves, but I think there's a growing recognition that when you expel somebody, you're sort of putting them in a school to prison pipeline. You know, the long-term effects of that are pretty negative. So there's, you know, inclusion is the trend in a lot of places. What the results of that are, I just can't say. I don't know.
All right. Well, with us having fielded all of our questions to you all, and having our senators chime in very well, I did want to give a chance for our government relations lead, which is Rashma Argawal, to just say a quick word. I think she has jumped on screen, and there she is. Go ahead, Rashma.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Senator Lovick and Senator Salomon and Shelly. Sorry, I'm late. I was actually on another meeting, or the skip meeting, where we were talking about transportation priorities for Snohomish County, and the importance of maintaining funding for some of those projects. So we're looking forward to the next version of the transportation budget. So I just wanted to say a personal thank you to all of you for joining this morning's coffee chat and being available given your busy schedules. And we'll look forward to working with you during the second half of session. So thank you again.
Thank you very, very much for that. And I just have to tell you this, every time I look at these projects, I remember when we were voting on the transportation legislation, I remember thinking a couple of things, but also thought about one word, and I'll say it 3 times: jobs, jobs, jobs. And that's what those things, when we look at those transportation projects that we're starting, it's about obviously having a good transportation system, but jobs in our communities. So thank you.
All right, well, with that said, we'll just go around for a couple of closing remarks. Senator Lovick, if you'd like to just give some closing remarks, and then Shelly, and then Rashma, if you feel open to just sharing some highlights as to how we move forward. So, Senator Lovick.
I will just simply say, first of all, it's a great honor to be with you this morning, but it's also a tremendous honor to serve the people. I always tell people I've been in public service for most of my life. This is my 52nd year of public service, starting in the Coast Guard, and I just love the opportunity to serve, and I'm honored beyond words to serve in the Washington State Senate. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be following you as we move on into this session, and I know you'll be working with Shelly and Rashma. Thank you for your time today and your leadership. Shelly?
Yeah. Well, this was a really enjoyable way to start a Tuesday morning. I know Senator Lovick and Senator Salomon are going to be off to caucus to start talking through the bills on today's list. Just so the group knows, because the point that we're at in session, both the House and the Senate are spending their days voting on bills. Prior to going to the floor to vote on a bill, they spend their time amongst their caucus. So Democrats meet together, Republicans meet together, and they consider the various amendments that have been proposed and have discussion on who wants to speak to a particular bill on the floor. Debates on bills, depending on the controversy of the bill, can take a very long time. And so when the Senate or when the House adjourns for the day, is unpredictable. Their schedules are not their own, especially when they're doing floor action. So I just share that for everyone's awareness to know that they truly are public servants, but not just because they are elected officials, but because they don't have a lot of control over their schedule at this point in the legislative session. And then I think the final thing that I would say is I think it's excellent that those of you who are here this morning showed up for this opportunity, and that Economic Alliance provides this direct access to elected officials. So often what we read in the news or what we hear through other media channels is a not completely accurate version. And I think that the point that I'll make is the majority of the policies that are being considered by the legislature, both in the House and the Senate, are being considered on a bipartisan basis. It's the bills that are more controversial, the bills that are more partisan, those are the bills that end up in the news. And so I just want to remind everyone that there is a lot that our state government is doing to improve and better our lives. And you heard from them this morning, sometimes they don't get it right. The first response to the Blake decision, they admit was not the right policy, even though at the time they thought it was. So anyway, those are my closing thoughts after today's conversation, and looking forward to working with you all and into the final half of this year's legislative session.
Thank you, Shelly. Thank you for your efforts and work. And we're really excited to move forward with you in this next portion of the session. Rashma?
Since I joined late, I don't want to touch on any specific issues, but I will just share one observation that might be of interest to everyone here. While EASC advocates on behalf of the business community and our community partners, I've been really amazed at how easy the state legislative process is to participate in, I think, especially after COVID. And so I would encourage anyone who is actually interested to take a look at their website, because you can easily sign in to support or convey your opinion on specific bills, and they've made it easily accessible to the general public and individuals. So I just wanted to leave that with everyone who might be interested in following it a little bit more closely. And I think active engagement is essential for our community as a whole, as these bills are being passed in the legislature that will impact funding decisions for all of us across all areas in our individual lives for the next 2 years. And if there are any questions, please always feel free to reach out to EASC. And we
right.
will be hosting an end of session update as well, in some format. So if you're interested, please stay tuned for that as well.
All right, thank you, Rashma, as well. Our team is doing amazing works trying to stay busy to speak on behalf of our business community, as Rashma mentioned, and Shelly. And so really thankful for that. As we close out, we just have a few updates and then obviously our gallery to share our coffee pieces. So William, if you can move us to our update pages, we will highlight what's next. We have the state of the utility coming up on March 14th. And it's again 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. This is an opportunity for us to connect our infrastructure focus, which is also tied to business sustainability, growth, and expansion. And so looking forward to having you all join us. If you haven't signed up for that, please do so. Next, we also have the amazing state of Everett. And so if you want to hear about what's taking place in the city this year, what's going to be moving forward for the rest of the year, please listen, sign up. It's at 3:30 to 6 p.m. on March 9th, and it's at the Edward D. Hanson Conference Center, and it is sponsored by the Boeing Company and Coastal Community Bank. We're really thankful for them. And Mayor Cassie Franklin will give her state of the city address. Now, we will go to our gallery screens. If everyone would be free to share their gallery pages and come on screen. If you have water, we do not discriminate, but if you want to show your coffee cups in solidarity, folks, this is Economic Alliance, Snohomish County. We're thankful for your time and your treasure here and your efforts. Please, please go out there, make an impact. Remember, we're one voice as a business community. Thank you. Have a great day.